Hello, hello, hello! Sorry. Welcome to Synergetic Games. My name is Natalie, and today we are going to be reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So we started doing this, for those of you who don't know, um, because we have had a book gifted to us by a member of the community. So what we want to do is finish off the old one, because I know that not everyone is a fan of Harry Potter, especially these days. Particularly, I don't want to torture. Thank you so much for the hype. I don't want to torture my mod for too much longer. Anyway, so I hope to finish. Everyone is a fan of Harry Potter, except except the mod. Hi, Starbreeze. How are you? So listen, we've got about 45 pages to go. I'm hoping to finish it today, but I'm gonna go for as long as I can actually go without, not paying attention and losing enthusiasm and whatnot. But look, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Because we're getting to the good stuff, so it might be, it might not feel that long at all. Oh, thank you. I'm good. Good today. A little bit tired, but I'm good today. Work was easy, so I was able to leave a little bit early, which is nice. It's always nice to be able to leave work early. Then I went shopping for food, and I found reduced salmon. I love salmon. I feel like fish is underrated. Not enough people like fish, in my opinion. People are like, fish is okay, but like not enough people like absolutely love it, in my opinion. Use this as my... Well, at least you've... thank you. At least that means you can fall asleep to the sound of my voice, which in some ways is a compliment, in other ways could be viewed as an insult, but I'm gonna call it a compliment. It's like, oh my god, you're so boring. I could fall asleep. And other times it's like, I could listen to you forever. Thank you very much, Avnok. I do appreciate that. I'm pretty sure fish and chips is the national dish. However, is it a... It actually is, yeah. Yes, it is. It is a quintessentially British thing. But like, there's fish and chips, and then there's, the rest of the seafood that that is super ignored. Like, nobody appreciates seafood in this country, despite the national dish being fish and chips. So, it is my job, however unofficially, to change opinions on the subject. No, it's not. Ah, bless you, Adnog. No, I have absolutely no idea to advocate for eating a wider variety of seafood to the rest of the country. I'm just gonna do it myself and enjoy it. Calamari is amazing. I love squid. So good. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna start, and we'll get on with this. Feel free to, chat amongst yourselves, and also there are reward systems that you can use throughout the stream if you really want to switch things up a bit. Fried calamari rings with some dip and sauce is just beautiful. Yeah. I do love just the plain stuff on like a salad and everything. It's nice. Isn't calamari a Star Wars race? Gonna say no, even though I can't currently think of the one you might be thinking of. They come from Mont Gallimer. Mon Calamar. Okay, cool. I think I've got a good idea of what's been going on, said Professor McGonagall. It doesn't take a genius to work it out. You fed Draco Malfoy some cock and bull story about a dragon, trying to get him out of bed and into trouble. I've already caught him. I suppose you think it's funny that Longbottom here heard the story and believed it too. Ooh, okay. Harold caught Neville's eye, trying to tell him, without words, that this wasn't true, because Neville was looking stunned and hurt. Poor blundering Neville, Harold knew. Harold knew what it must have cost him to try and find him in the dark to warn them. I'm disgusted, Professor McGonagall. 4 students out of bed. Is 4 students out of bed in one night? I've never heard of such a thing before. You, Miss Granger, I thought you had more sense. As for you, Mr. Potter... I should have gone for McGonagall. Well, you know what? I don't think there's, putting it out there, I don't think there's, like a cooldown for the word ban. I might be wrong. I haven't touched it in ages, but I'm pretty sure there's not a cooldown. Okay, so we're gonna call this like we're gonna try and ban it for like 5 minutes, so time it for me, but I'm keeping an eye on it, kinda. I thought you had more sense. As for you, Mr. Potter, I thought Gryffindor meant more to you than this. All 3 of you will receive detentions. Yes, you too, Mr. Longbottom. Nothing gives you the right to walk around school at night, especially these days. It's very dangerous, and 50 points will be taken from Gryffindor. 50? Harold gasped. They would lose the lead he'd won in the last Quidditch match. 50 points each, said Professor McGonagall, breathing heavily through her long, pointed nose. Professor, please, you can't! Don't tell me what I can and can't do, Potter. Now, oh, yeah, sorry. There is a cooldown. What's the cooldown? Does it say? I could investigate this. We'll do it in a bit. What I can and can't do, Mr. Potter. Now, get back to bed, all of you. I've never been more ashamed of Gryffindor students. 150 points lost. That put Gryffindor in last place. In one night, they'd ruined any chance Gryffindor had at the House Cup. Harold felt as though the bottom had dropped out of his stomach. How could they ever make up for this? Harry didn't sleep. Oh, God. Harold didn't sleep all night. He could hear Neville sobbing into his pillow for what seemed like hours. Harold couldn't think of anything to say to comfort him. He knew Neville, like himself, was dreading the dawn. What would happen when the rest of the Gryffindors found out what they'd done? At first, Gryffindors passing the giant hourglass that recorded the house points the next day thought there'd been a mistake. How could they suddenly have 150 points fewer than yesterday? Then the story started to spread. Harry Potter, the famous Harry Potter, Harold Potter, the famous Harold Potter, the hero of 2 Quidditch matches, had lost them all those points. Him and a couple of other stupid first years. From being one of the most popular and admired people at school, Harold was suddenly the most hated. Even Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs turned on him, because everyone had been longing to see Slytherin lose the House Cup. Everywhere Harold went, people pointed and didn't trouble to lower their voices as they insulted him. Slytherins, on the other hand, clapped as he walked past them. whistling and cheering. Thanks, Potter, we owe you one. Only Ron stood by him. They'll all forget this in a few weeks. Fred and George have lost loads of points in all the time they've been here, and people still like them. There does need to be, I'm sure there does need to be a forfeit for failing, but I have no idea what one could be. Please feel free to brainstorm, and I'll see if I like any of the ideas. But you see, the thing is, I have an aversion to punishing myself, so I'm not exactly prone to thinking up ideas to do so. They've never lost 150 points in one go, though, have they? Said Harold miserably. Well, no, Ron admitted. It was a bit late to repair the damage, but Harry swore to himself not to meddle in things that weren't his business from now on. Sorry, Harold, damn it. Good, I'm glad we're on the same page, Avnok. But you know what? It's been 5 minutes anyway, so so we're all good. We can stop now. Sorry, things that weren't his business from now on. He'd had it with sneaking around and spying. He felt so ashamed of himself that he went to Wood and offered to resign from the Quidditch team. Resign? Wood thundered. What good will that do? How are we going to get any points back if we can't win at Quidditch? But even Quidditch had lost its fun. The rest of the team wouldn't speak to Harry during practice. And if they had to speak about him, they called him the Seeker. Okay, sure. I'll do my best. I'm not sure how when she'll turn up, to be honest. Okay, we'll start from now. Okay. Hermione and Neville were suffering too. They hadn't had as bad a time as Harry because they weren't as well known, but nobody would speak to them either. Hermione had stopped drawing attention to herself in class, keeping her head down and working in silence. Harry was almost glad that the exams weren't far away. All the revision he had done kept his mind off his misery. He, Ron, and Hermione kept to themselves, working late into the night, trying to remember the ingredients in complicated potions, learn charms and spells off by heart, and memorize the dates of magical discoveries and goblin rebellions. Then, about a week before the exams were due to start, Harry's new resolution not to interfere with anything that didn't concern him was put to an unexpected test. Walking back from the library on his own one afternoon, he heard somebody whimpering from a classroom up ahead. As he drew closer, he heard Quirrell's voice. No, it isn't. It's not cheating. Leave me alone. No, not again, please. It sounded as though someone was threatening him. Harry moved closer. All right, he heard Quirrell sob. Next second, Quirrell came hurrying out of the classroom, straightening his turban. He was pale and looked as though he was about to cry. He strode out of sight. Harry didn't think Quirrell had even noticed him. He waited until Quirrell's footsteps had disappeared, then peered into the classroom. It was empty, but a door stood ajar at the other end. Harry was halfway toward it before he remembered what he'd promised himself about not meddling. All the same, he'd have gambled 12 Philosopher's Stones that Snape had just left the room, and from what Harry had just heard, Snape would be walking with a new spring in his step. Quirrell seemed to have given in at last. Harry went back to the library where Hermione was testing Ron on astronomy. Harry told them what he'd heard. "Snape's done it again then," said Ron. "If Quirrell's told him how to break his anti-dark force spell." Anti-dark force spell? Oh, jeez. "They're still fluffy, though," said Hermione. "Maybe Snape's found out how to get past him without asking Hagrid," said Ron, looking up at the thousands of books surrounding them. "I bet there's a book somewhere in here telling you how to get past a giant three-headed dog. So what do we do, Harry?" The light of adventure was kindling again in Ron's eyes, but Hermione answered before Harry could. "Go to Dumbledore. That's what we should have done ages ago. If we try anything ourselves, we'll be thrown out for sure." "But we've got no proof," said Harry. "Quirrell's too scared to back us up. Snape's only got to say he doesn't know how the troll got in at Halloween, and that he was nowhere near the third floor. Who do you think they'll believe, him or us? It's not exactly a secret we hate him. Dumbledore'll think we made it all up to get him sacked. Filch wouldn't help us if his life depended on it. He's too friendly with Snape, and the more students get thrown out, the better he'll think. And don't forget, we're not supposed to know about Stone or Fluffy. That'll take a lot of explaining." Herman looked convinced, but Ron didn't. "If we just do a bit of poking around..." "No," said Harry flatly. "We've done enough poking around." He pulled a map of Jupiter toward him and started to learn the names of the moons. The following morning, notes were delivered to Harry, Hermione, and Neville at the breakfast table. They were all the same. "Your detention will take place at 11 o'clock tonight. Meet Mr. Filch in the entrance hall. Professor M. McGonagall." And that right there is the 5-minute mark. So Hermione has been retired. Harry had forgotten that they still had detentions to do in the future, over the points they'd lost. He half expected Hermione to complain that this was a whole night of revision lost, but she didn't say a word. Like Harry, she felt like they deserved what they'd got. At 11 o'clock that night, they said goodbye to Ron in the common room and went down to the entrance hall with Neville. I was just thinking how funny it was that, like, this is the one time Ron isn't around to get in trouble, and Hermione is. I mean, that's probably not true, but I feel like this is a notable instance of Ron not getting punished when he shouldn't be. Because it's usually him and Harry that get in trouble, not him and Hermione. At 11 o'clock that night, they said goodbye to Ron in the common room and went down to the entrance hall with Neville. Filch was already there, and so was Malfoy. Harry had also forgotten that Malfoy had got a detention too. "Follow me," said Filch, lighting a lamp and leading them outside. "I bet you'll think twice about breaking a school rule again, won't you, eh?" he continued, leering at them. "Oh yes, hard work and pain are the best teachers if you ask me. It's just a pity they let the old punishments die out. Hanging you by your wrists from the ceiling for a few days. I got the chains still in my office. Keep 'em well oiled, in case they're ever needed. Right, off we go. And don't think of running off now. It'll be worse for you if you do." Oh, okay. That is a curveball. I'll do my best. Let's see, what's the time? Okay, cool. Okay, we'll start from here. They marched up across the dark grounds. Neville kept sniffling. Harry wondered what their punishment was going to be. It must be something really horrible, or Filch wouldn't be sounding so delighted. The moon was bright, but clouds scudding across it kept throwing them into darkness. Ahead, Harry could see the lighted windows of Hagrid's hut. Then they heard a distant shout. "Is that you, Filch? Hurry up, I want to get started." Harry's heart rose. If they were going to be if they were going to be working with Hagrid, it wouldn't be so bad. His relief must have showed on his face, because Filch said, "I suppose you think you'll be enjoying yourself with that oaf. Well, think again, boy. It's into the forest you're going." I'm not much mistaken. You'll all come out in... I'm much mistaken if you'll all come out in one piece. At this, Neville let out a little moan, and Malfoy stopped dead in his tracks. "The forest?" he repeated. He didn't sound quite as cool as usual. "We can't go in there at night. There's all sorts of things in there. Werewolves, I heard." Neville clutched the sleeve of Harry's robe and made a choking noise. "That's your lookout, isn't it?" said Filch, his voice cracking with glee. "Should have thought of them werewolves before you got in trouble, shouldn't you?" I thought that would be good. I can't hear it myself because I'd get distracted by the songs, but I'm glad that I added the media track to the just chatting window. I thought it was a good touch. Hagrid came striding towards them out of the dark, Fang at his heel. He was carrying his large crossbow, and a quiver of arrows hung over his shoulder. "About time," he said. "I've been waiting for half an hour already." "All right, Harry." "Hermione." "I shouldn't be too friendly to them, Hagrid," said Filch coldly. "They're here to be punished, after all." "That's why you're late, is it?" said Hagrid, frowning at Filch. "Been lecturing 'em, eh?" "It's not your place to do that. You've done your bit. I'll take over from here." "I'll be back at dawn," said Filch. "For what's left of them," he added nastily. He started back towards the castle, his lamp bobbing away in the darkness. Malfoy now turned to Hagrid. "I'm not going in that forest," he said, and Harry was pleased to hear a note of panic in his voice. You are if you want to stay at Hogwarts," said Hagrid fiercely. "You've done nothing. You've done wrong. Now you gotta pay the price for it." "You win again." Well, no, because then I have to figure out a good substitute. Dum. But this is servant stuff. It's not for students to do. I thought we'd be writing lines or something. If my father knew I was doing this, he'd... "Tell you that's how it is at Hogwarts," said Hagrid growled. "Writing lines? What good's that to anyone? You'll do something useful, or you'll get out. If you think your father'd rather you were expelled, Then get back to your castle. Pack and go. Go on. Malfoy didn't move. He looked at Hagrid furiously, but then dropped his gaze. Right then, said Hagrid. Now listen carefully, because it's dangerous what we're gonna do tonight. I don't want no one taking risks. Follow me over here. Follow me over here a moment. He led them to the very edge of the forest. Holding his lamp high, he pointed down a narrow, winding earth track that disappeared into the thick black trees. A light breeze lifted their hair as they looked into the forest. Look there, said Hagrid. See that stuff shining on the ground? Silvery stuff. That's unicorn blood. There's a unicorn in there, been hurt badly by someone. This is the second time in a week. I found one dead last Wednesday. We're gonna try and find the poor thing. We might have to put it out of its misery. What if whatever hurt the unicorn finds us first? Said Malfoy, unable to keep the fear out of his voice. Oh, hooray! The 5 minutes is up. There's nothing that lives in the forest that'll hurt you if you're with me or Fang, said Hagrid. And keep to the path. Right, now, we're gonna split into 2 parties and follow the trail in different directions. There's blood all over the place. It must have been staggering around since last night, at least. I want Fang, said Malfoy quickly, looking at Fang's long teeth. All right, but I warn you, he's a coward, said Hagrid. So me, Harry, and Hermione will go one way, and Draco and Neville and Fang will go the other. Now, if any of us finds the unicorn, we'll send up green sparks, right? Get your wands out and practice now. That's it. And if anyone gets in trouble, send up red sparks and we'll all come and find you. So, be careful. Let's go. The forest was black and silent. A little way into it, they reached a fork in the earth path, and Harry and Hermione and Hagrid took the left path while Malfoy, Neville, and Fang took the right. They walked in silence, their eyes on the ground. Every now and then a ray of moonlight through the branches above it lit a spot of silver-blue blood on the fallen leaves. Harry saw that Hagrid looked very worried. Could a werewolf be killing the unicorns? Harry asked. Not fast enough, said Hagrid. It's not easy to catch a unicorn. They're powerful magic creatures. I never knew one to be hurt before. They walked past a mossy tree stump. Harry could hear running water. There must be a stream somewhere close by. There were still spots of unicorn blood here and there along the winding path. You're all right, Hermione, said Hagrid. Hagrid whispered. Don't worry, it can't have gone far or this badly hurt. And then we'll be able to get behind that tree! Hagrid seized Harry and Hermione and hoisted them off the path behind the towering oak. He pulled out an arrow and fitted it into his crossbow, raising it ready to fire. The 3 of them listened. Something was slithering about over the dead leaves nearby. It sounded like a cloak trailing on the ground. Hagrid was squinting up the dark path, but after a few seconds the sound faded away. I knew it, he muttered. There's summit in here that shouldn't be. A werewolf? Harry suggested. That wasn't no werewolf, and it wasn't no unicorn neither, said Hagrid grimly. Right, follow me, but be careful now. Oof. Pardon me. They walked more slowly, ears straining for the faintest sound. Suddenly, in a clearing ahead, something definitely moved. "Who's there?" Hagrid called. "Show yourself! I'm armed!" And into the clearing came, was it a man or a horse? To the waist a man, with red hair and beard, but below was that of a horse's gleaming chestnut body, with a long reddish tail. Harry and Hermione's jaws dropped. "Oh, it's you, Ronan," said Hagrid in relief. "How are ye?" He walked forward and shook the centaur's hand. "Good evening to you, Hagrid," said Ronan. He had a deep, sorrowful voice. "Were you going to shoot me?" "Can't be too careful, Ronan," said Hagrid, patting his crossbow. "There's summat bad loose in this forest. This is Harry Potter and Hermione Granger, by the way, students up at the school. And this is Ronan, you two. He's a centaur." "We'd noticed," said Hermione faintly. "Good evening," said Ronan. "Students, are you? And do you learn much up at the school?" A bit," said Hermione timidly. "A bit. Well, that's something," Ronan sighed. He flung back his head and stared at the sky. "Mars is bright tonight." "Yeah," said Hagrid, glancing up too. "Listen, I'm glad we've run into you, Ronan, 'cause there's a unicorn been hurt. You seen anything?" Ronan didn't answer immediately. He stared unblinkingly upwards and sighed again. "Always the innocent are the first victims," he said. "So it has been for ages past, and so it is now." "Yeah," said Hagrid. "But have you seen anything, Ronan? Anything unusual?" "Mars is bright tonight," Ronan repeated, while Hagrid watched him impatiently. "Unusually bright." "Yeah, but I was meaning anything unusual, a bit nearer home," said Hagrid. "So you haven't noticed anything strange?" Yet again, Ronan took a while to answer. At last he said, "The forest hides many secrets." A movement in the trees behind Ronan made Hagrid raise his bow again. But it was only a second centaur, black-haired and bodied, and wilder-looking than Ronan. "Hello, Bane," said Hagrid. "All right." Bane walked over to stand next to Ronan. He looked skyward. "Mars is bright tonight," he said simply. "We've heard," said Hagrid grumpily. "Well, if either of you do see something, let me know, won't you? We'll be off then." Harry and Hermione followed them out of the clearing, staring over their shoulders at Ronan and Bane until the trees blocked their view. "Never," said Hagrid irritably, "try and get a straight answer out of a centaur. Ruddy stargazers, not interested in anything closer than the moon." "Do you think that was a centaur we heard earlier?" said Harry. "Did that sound like hoofs to you?" "Nah, if you ask me. That was what's been killing the unicorns. Never heard anything like it before." They walked on through the dense, dark trees. Harry kept looking nervously over his shoulder. It had the nasty feeling they were being watched. He was very glad that they had Hagrid and his crossbow with them. They had just passed the bend in the path when Hermione grabbed Hagrid's arm. "Hagrid, look! Red sparks! The others are in trouble!" "You two wait here," Hagrid shouted. "Stay on the path. I'll come back for you." Sorry, had to have some tea there. Okay, cool. They heard him crashing away through the undergrowth and stood looking at each other, very scared, until they couldn't hear anything but the rustling of leaves around them. "You don't think they've been hurt, do you?" whispered Hermione. "I don't care if Malfoy has, but if something's got Neville, it's our fault he's here in the first place." The minutes dragged by. Their ears seemed sharper than usual. Harry seemed to be picking up every sigh of the wind, every cracking twig. What was going on? Where were the others? At last, a great crunching noise announced Hagrid's return. Malfoy, Neville, and Fang were with him. Hagrid was fuming. Malfoy, it seemed, had sneaked up behind Neville and grabbed him for a joke. Neville had panicked and sent up the sparks. "We'll be lucky to catch anything now with the racket you two were making." "Right. We're changing groups. Neville, you stay with me and Hermione. Harry, you go with Fang and this idiot." "I'm sorry," Hagrid added in a whisper to Harry, "but he'll have a harder time frightening you. And we've got to get this done." So Harry set off into the heart of the forest with Malfoy and Fang. They walked for nearly half an hour, deeper and deeper into the forest until the path became almost impossible to follow because the trees were so thick. Harry thought the blood seemed to be getting thicker. There were splashes on the roots of a tree, as though the poor creature had been thrashing around in pain close by. Harry could see a clearing ahead, through the tangled branches of an ancient oak. "Look," he muttered, holding out his arm to stop Malfoy. Something bright white was gleaming on the ground. They inched closer. It was the unicorn, all right, and it was dead. Harry had never seen anything so beautiful and sad. Its long, slender legs were stuck out at odd angles where it had fallen, and its mane was spread pearly white on the dark leaves. Harry had taken one step towards it when a slithering sound made him freeze where he stood. A bush on the edge of the clearing quivered. Then, out of the shadows, a hooded figure came crawling across the ground like some stalking beast. Harry, Malfoy, and Fang stood transfixed. The cloaked figure reached the unicorn. It lowered its head over the wound in the animal's side and began to drink its blood. "Ah!" Malfoy let out a terrible scream and bolted. So did Fang. The hooded figure raised its head and looked right at Harry. Unicorn blood was dribbling down its front. It got to its feet and came swiftly towards him. He couldn't move for fear. Then a pain pierced his head like he'd never felt before. It was as though his scar was on fire. Half blinded, he staggered backwards. He heard hoofs behind him, galloping. Something jumped clean over him, charging the figure. The pain in Harry's head was so bad he fell to his knees. It took a minute or two to pass. When he looked up, the figure had gone. A centaur was standing over him, not Ronan or Bane. This one looked younger. He had white blonde hair and a palomino body. "Are you all right?" said the centaur, pulling Harry to his feet. "Yes, thank you. What was that?" The centaur didn't answer. He had astonishingly blue eyes, like pale sapphires. He looked carefully at Harry, his eyes lingering on the scar which stood out livid on Harry's forehead. "You are the Potter boy," he said. "You had better get back to Hagrid. The forest is not safe at this time, especially for you. Can you ride? It will be quicker this way. My name is Ferenz," he added as he lowered himself onto his front legs so that Harry could clamber onto his back. There was suddenly the sound of more galloping from the other side of the clearing. Ronan and Vane came bursting through the trees, their flanks heaving and sweaty. "Firenze!" Vane thundered. "What are you doing? You have a human on your back. Have you no shame? Are you a common mule?" "Do you realize who this is?" said Firenze. "This is the Potter boy. The quicker he leaves the forest, the better." "What have you been telling him?" growled Vane. "Remember, Firenze, we are sworn not to set ourselves against the heavens. Have we not read what is to come in the movements of the planets?" Ronan pawed the ground nervously. "I'm sure Firenze thought he was acting for the best," he said in his gloomy voice. Vane kicked his back legs in anger. "For the best? What is that to do with us? Centaurs are concerned with what has been foretold. It is not our business to run around like donkeys after stray humans in our forest." Firenze suddenly reared onto his hind legs in anger, so that Harry had to grab his shoulders to stay on. "Do you not see that unicorn?" Firenze bellowed at Vane. "Do you not understand why it was killed? Or have the planets not let you in on that secret? I set myself against what is lurking in this forest, Vane. Yes, with humans alongside me, if I must." And Firenze whisked around, with Harry clutching on as best he could. They plunged off into the trees, leaving Ronan and Vane behind them. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on. Sounds like a summary for the entire series of books. "Why's Vane so angry?" he asked. "What was that thing you saved me from, anyway?" Firenze slowed to a walk, warned Harry to keep his head bowed in case of low-hanging branches, but he did not answer Harry's question. They made their way through the trees in silence. It was so long that Harry thought Firenze didn't want to talk to him anymore. They were passing through a particularly dense patch of trees, however, when Firenze suddenly stopped. "Harry Potter, do you know what unicorn blood is used for?" "No," said Harry, startled by the odd question. "We've only used the horns and the tail hair in potions." "Hey, you got your Christmas lights done, though. Hi, welcome to the stream. How are you, Laffy Taffy?" "That is because it is a monstrous thing to slay a unicorn," said Firenze. "Only one who has nothing to lose and everything to gain would commit such a crime. The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips." Harry stared at the back of Firenze's head, which was dappled silver in the moonlight. What if you just do a blood draw from the unicorn and don't kill it? Yes, this is my main question. What if like it's already bleeding or something, or it's like bleeding and it's definitely not going to die? If you haven't killed it, is it then okay? But I think I don't know. It is a technicality that is never addressed. But they do say that unicorns aren't easy to catch, so I can only imagine that it's not something you're going to get your hands on readily. It's not like you can ask it, for its blood just on the off chance, Ugh. Tranquilizer dog. But then you'll have the trank in its bloodstream too. Stupefy, oh my gosh. I think the main issue here is a lack of permission. But also I don't know what it is. Stop flinging out spells. Just stop trying to make spells happen. It's never going to happen. But anyway. You raise a baby unicorn from birth so it loves me. Okay, roll a d20, see if that works out for you. Which was dappled silver in the moonlight. Okay, cool. But who'd be that desperate, he wondered aloud. If you're going to be cursed forever, that's better, isn't it? It is, Ferenz agreed. Unless all you need is to stay alive long enough to drink something else. Something that will bring you back to full strength and power. Something that will mean you can never die. Mr. Potter, do you know what is hidden in the school at this very moment? The Philosopher's Stone! Of course, the elixir of life! But I don't understand who... Can you think of nobody who has waited many years to return to power? Who has clung to life, awaiting their chance? It was as though an iron fist had clenched suddenly around Harry's heart. Over the rustling of the trees, he seemed to hear once more what Hagrid told him on the night they had met. Some say he died, codswallop in my opinion. Dunno if he had enough human left in him to die. Do you mean... Harry croaked. The vault... Harry! Harry, are you all right? Hermione was running towards them down the path, Hagrid puffing along behind her. I'm fine, said Harry, hardly knowing what he was saying. The unicorn's dead, Hagrid. It's in that clearing back there. This is where I leave you, Ferenz murmured as Hagrid hurried off. As Hagrid hurried off to examine the unicorn. You are safe now. Harry slid off his back. Good luck, Harry Potter, said Ferenz. The planets have been read wrongly before now, even by centaurs. I hope this is one of those times. He turned and cantered back into the depths of the forest, leaving Harry shivering behind them. Roll to 17. All right, okay. Yeah, I feel like you can get away with raising a unicorn to love you. Just about. If we had any modifiers for like animal handling, maybe. If you play D&D, just use the modifier on your last character sheet. I don't know. We'll see how well your animal handling goes, but I'll believe you. You probably could get away with raising a baby unicorn. You will be the king of the unicorn. Oh, wow. See, this is why you can't have nice things. Including unicorns. I regret giving you permission. Oh, thank you so much for the gift sub, Gray. How are you? Apart from that nice thing, yes, you can have that nice thing. That is permitted. Welcome to the community, officially, Lappy Tappy, this time around. Thank you again, Gray, for the gift sub. How are you? How have you been? Bless your buttons, Gray. You're trapped now. Yeah, you're stuck here for at least a month. You have the opportunity to escape. It could happen, you know. Could happen. But for now, you're stuck here for at least a month, so get used to it. Okay. Ron had fallen asleep in the dark common room, waiting for them to return. He shouted something about Quidditch fouls when Harry roughly shook him awake. In a matter of seconds, though, he was wide-eyed as Harry began to tell him and Hermione what had happened in the forest. Harry couldn't sit down. He paced up and down in front of the fire. He was still shaking. Snape wants the stone for Voldemort, and Voldemort's waiting in the forest. And all this time we thought Snape just wanted it to get rich. "Stop saying the name," said Ron in a terrified whisper. Oh, sorry. "Stop saying the name!" I should... This is what's going to happen. You've been darted with unicorn dart. You're the unicorn dart. Is it just a dart in the shape of a unicorn? Or has it got, like, unicorn blood in it? It's like, okay, now you're here, you're going to be living a half-life. Welcome. Welcome to the fam, man. As if he thought Voldemort could hear them, Harry wasn't listening. "Firenze saved me, but he shouldn't have done. Bane was furious. He was talking about interfering with what the planets say is going to happen. They must show that Voldemort's coming back. Bane thinks Firenze should have let Voldemort kill me. I suppose that's what's written in the stars as well." "Will you stop saying the name?" Ron hissed. "So all you've got to wait for now is for Snape to steal the stone," Harry went on feverishly. "So all I've got to wait for now is for Harry to steal the stone. Okay. Then Voldemort will be able to finish me off. Well, I suppose Bane will be happy." Hermione looked very frightened, but she had a word of comfort. "Harry, everyone says Dumbledore's the only one you know who is ever afraid of. With Dumbledore around, you know who won't touch you. Anyway, who says the centaurs are right? It sounds more like fortune-telling to me, and Professor McGonagall says that's a very imprecise branch of magic." The skies had turned light before they stopped talking. They went to bed exhausted, their throats sore. But the night surprises weren't over. When Harry pulled back his sheets, he found his invisibility cloak folded underneath them. There was a note pinned to it, just in case. Oh, Harry Potter Puppet Pals! I loved Harry Potter Puppet Pals. Snape. Severus Snape. Dumbledore! Oh, definitely check out Harry Potter Puppet Pals. They've got some good stuff. You can find the videos on YouTube. I was climbing around in my bushes to put the Christmas lights, and now my cat is climbing all over me. Aw. Well, at least your cat's curious about you. That's one thing. But do highly recommend the Harry Potter Puppet Pals. Check it out. Also, if you guys are unaware, there is a fan-made Harry Potter musical called A Very Potter Musical. There is technically 3. There's a Very Potter Musical 1, Very Potter Musical 2, and a Very Potter Musical Senior Year, which was never... they sort of performed it at like an MCM or something and filmed it there, but they didn't film it in like a proper theatre or something that I recall. I haven't even seen Senior Year yet, but a Harry Potter musical is so good, and I highly recommend it. They condense the books a little bit. So like there's 3, they condense about 3 books in the first one and then 3 books in the second one, and I don't really know what they do with the Senior Year, but do they fly around with very obvious robes and stuff? Not really, but you'll love the way that they cast magic. That's all I'm gonna say. I won't tell you which books, but at the very least, check out the first one. I love it. I love it to pieces, and to be honest, it's just making me want to watch it again at this point. It's so good. The sound quality is not always the greatest, I'll admit, but that's because they're filming it in a theater, and you know, probably on like a regular poof. It's even better than that. But yeah, no, do check it out. It is a whole lot of fun. I highly recommend it. It is brilliant. Chapter 16, Through the Trapdoor. Trapdoor. In years to come, Harry would never quite remember how he had managed to get through his exams when he half expected Voldemort to come bursting through the door at any moment. Yet the days crept by, and there could be no doubt that Fluffy was still alive and well behind the locked door. It was swelteringly hot, especially in a large classroom when they did their written papers. They had been given special new quills for the exams, which had been bewitched with an anti-cheating spell. They had practical exams as well. Professor Flitwick called them one by one into his classroom to see if they could make a pineapple tap dance across a desk. Professor McGonagall watched them turn a mouse into a snuff box. Points were given for how pretty the snuff box was, but taken away if it had whiskers. Snape made them all nervous, breathing down their necks while they tried to remember how to make a forgetfulness potion. Which is ironic, but okay. Harry did the best he could, trying to ignore the stabbing pains in his forehead which had been bothering him ever since his trip into the forest. Neville thought Harry had a bad case of exam nerves because Harry couldn't sleep. But the truth was that Harry had been being woken up by his old nightmare, except that this was now worse than ever because there was a hooded figure dripping blood in it. Maybe it was because they hadn't seen what Harry had seen in the forest, or because they didn't have scars burning on their foreheads, but Ron and Hermione didn't seem as worried about the stone as Harry. The idea of Voldemort certainly scared them, but he didn't keep visiting them in dreams. And they were so busy with their revision that they didn't have much time to fret about what Snape or anyone else might be up to. Their last exam was History of Magic. 1 hour of answering questions about batty old wizards who'd invented self-stirring cauldrons, and they'd be free. Free for a whole wonderful week until their exam results came out. Then the ghost of Professor Binns told them to put down their quills. When the ghost of Professor Binns told them to put down their quills and roll up their parchment, Harry couldn't help cheering with the rest. "That was far easier than I thought it would be," said Hermione, as they joined the crowds flocking into the sunny grounds. "I needn't have learnt about the 1637 werewolf code of conduct, or the uprising of Elfric the Eager." Hermione always liked to go through their exam papers afterwards, but Ron said that this made him feel ill. So they wandered down to the lake and flopped under a tree. The Weasley twins and Lee Jordan were tickling the tentacles of a giant squid, which was basking in the warm shallows. "No more revision," Ron sighed happily, stretching out on the grass. "You could look more cheerful, Harry. We've got a week before we find out how badly we've done. There's no need to worry yet." Harry was rubbing his forehead. "I wish I knew what this means." The lake is freaking terrifying. It is a fantastic lake, and it is the only reason that it's not the only reason I'd want to be a Slytherin. I love the color green apart from anything else, but they've got such a cool common room. They have an underwater view of everything. They've got like a little observatory. It's so cool. Like their own little aquarium, basically. I would love to be in that common room, not gonna lie. It's underwater. They can see into the lake. They do. They really do. It casts the room into like a little sort of green murky light, so it looks a little bit sinister. Probably more sinister than it deserves to be. You'd be a dark witch for that. Me too, man. Me too. Okay. He burst out angrily. My scar keeps hurting. It's happened before, but never as often as this. Go to Madame Pomfrey, Hermione suggested. I'm not ill, said Harry. I think it's a warning. It means danger's coming. Ron couldn't get worked up. It was too hot. Harry, relax. Hermione's right. The stone's safe as long as Dumbledore's around. Anyway, we've never had any proof Snape found out how to get past Fluffy. He nearly had his leg ripped off once. He's not going to try it again in a hurry. And Neville will play Quidditch for England before Hagrid lets Dumbledore down. Harry nodded, but he couldn't shake off the lurking feeling that there was something he'd forgotten to do. Something important. When he tried to explain this, Hermione said, That's just the exams. I woke up last night and was halfway through my Transfiguration notes before I remembered we'd done that one. Harry was quite sure the unsettling feeling didn't have anything to do with work, though. He watched an owl flutter towards the school across the bright blue sky, a note clamped in its mouth. Hagrid was the only one who ever sent him letters. Hagrid would never betray Dumbledore. Hagrid would never tell anyone how to get past Fluffy. Never. But Harry suddenly jumped to his feet. Where are you going? Said Ron sleepily. I've just thought of something, said Harry. He had gone white. We've got to go and see Hagrid now. Why? Panted Hermione, hurrying to keep up. Don't you think it's a bit odd, said Harry, scrambling up the grassy slope, that what Hagrid wants more than anything else is a dragon, and a stranger turns up who just happens to have an egg in his pocket? How many people wander around with dragon eggs? If it's against wizard law. Lucky they found Hagrid, don't you think? Why didn't I see it before? What do you want about? Said Ron. But Harry, sprinting across the grounds towards the forest, didn't answer. Hagrid was sitting in an armchair outside his house. His trousers and sleeves were rolled up and he was shelling peas into a large bowl. Hello, he said, smiling. Finished your exams? Got time for a drink? Yes, please, said Ron, but Harry cut across him. No, we're in a hurry, Hagrid. I've got to ask you something. You know that night you won Norbert? What did the stranger you were playing cards with look like? Dunno, said Hagrid casually. He didn't take his cloak off. He saw the three of them look stunned and raised his eyebrows. It's not that unusual. You get a lot of funny folk in the Hog's Head. But the pub down in the village might have been a dragon dealer, mightn't he? Never saw his face. He kept his hood up. Harry sank down next to the bowl of peas. What did you talk to him about, Hagrid? Did you mention Hogwarts at all? Might have come up, said Hagrid, frowning as he tried to remember. Yeah, he asked me what I did, and I told him I was a groundskeeper here. He asked a bit about the sort of creatures I look after. So I told him. And I said I'd always wanted And I told him what I'd always really wanted was a dragon. And then, can't remember too well, because he kept buying me drinks. Let's see. Yeah. Then he said he had the dragon egg, and we could play cards for it if I wanted. but he had to be sure that I could handle it. Didn't want to let it go to any old home. So I told him after Fluffy, a dragon would be easy. Hagrid should definitely not hang around in shady places, but, you know, there you go. That's kind of how he knew. He's distressingly naive, is Hagrid. That's his main problem. Okay. And did he seem interested in Fluffy? Harry asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Well, yeah. How many three-headed dogs do you meet? Even around Hogwarts. So I told him Fluffy's a piece of cake, if you know how to calm him down. Just play him a bit of music and he'll go right off to sleep. Hagrid suddenly looked horrified. I shouldn't have told you that, he blurted out. Forget I said it. Hey, where are you going? Harry, Ron, and Hermione didn't speak to each other at all until they came to a halt in the entrance hall, which seemed very cold and gloomy after the grounds. We've got to go to Dumbledore? Dumbledore, said Harry. Hagrid told the stranger how to get past Fluffy, and it was either Snape or Voldemort under that cloak. Must have been easy once he got Hagrid drunk. I just hope Dumbledore believes us. Firenze might back us up if Bane doesn't stop him. Where's Dumbledore's office? They looked around as if hoping to see a sign pointing them in the right direction. They had never been told where Dumbledore lived, nor did they know anyone who had been sent to see him. We'll just have to... Harry began, but a voice suddenly rang out across the hall. What are you three doing inside? It was Professor McGonagall, carrying a large pile of books. We want to see Professor Dumbledore, said Hermione, rather bravely. Harry and Ron thought. Hagrid, shady boy. You're right there. Can't believe it flagged the term naked. The other one I can understand, but context-wise I'll allow it. See Professor Dumbledore? Professor McGonagall repeated, as though this was a very fishy thing to want to do. Why? Harry swallowed. Now what? It's sort of secret, he said. But he wished at once he hadn't, because Professor McGonagall's nostrils flared. Professor Dumbledore left about 10 minutes ago, she said coldly. He received an urgent owl from the Ministry of Magic and flew off for London at once. He's gone, said Harry frantically. Now? Professor Dumbledore is a very great wizard, Potter. He has many demands on his time. But this is important. Something you have to say is more important than the Ministry of Magic, Potter. It's sort of secret. It's like a guaranteed thing that's gonna get the adults to question you. Oh, it's a secret, is it? Surprised McGonagall didn't take 50 points from Gryffindor for that statement, right? But you know what? I bet they've had their punishment. She'll put it aside until they do something else. Look, said Harry, throwing caution to the winds. Professor, it's about the Philosopher's Stone. Whatever Professor McGonagall had expected, it wasn't that. The book she was carrying tumbled out of her arms, but she didn't pick them up. How do you know? She spluttered. Professor, I think I know that someone's going to try and steal the stone. I've got to talk to Professor Dumbledore. She eyed them with a mixture of shock and suspicion. Professor Dumbledore will be back tomorrow, she said finally. I don't know how you found out about the stone, but rest assured no one could possibly steal it. It's too well protected. But Professor Potter! I know what I'm talking about, she said shortly. She bent down and gathered up the fallen books. I suggest you all go back outside and enjoy the sunshine. But they didn't. It's tonight, said Harry, once he was sure that Professor McGonagall was out of earshot. Snape's going through the trapdoor tonight. He's found out everything he needs to know now. He's got Dumbledore out of the way. He sent that note. I bet the Ministry of Magic will get a real shock when Dumbledore turns up. But what can we... Hermione gasped. Ron and Hermione wheeled around. Snape was standing there. Good afternoon, he said smoothly. They stared at him. You shouldn't be inside on a day like this, he said, with an odd, twisted smile. We were... Harry began without any idea what he was going to say. You want to be more careful, said Snape. Hanging around like this, people will think you're up to something. And Gryffindor really can't afford to lose any more points, can they? Harry flushed. They turned to go back outside, but Snape called them back. Be warned, Potter. Any more nighttime wanderings, and I will personally make sure you are expelled. Good day to you. He strode off in the direction of the staff room. Out on the stone steps, Harry turned to the others. Wow. Stone's about to be stolen. Voldemort's come back to life. The world's gonna come to an end, but there's nothing to do about it. Let's go spend some time in the sunshine. Alright, yeah. I mean, you'd think even if Professor McGonagall doesn't know how they heard about the stone, she'd be like, I should probably keep an eye on that situation. But you know what, kiddos? Go back outside. No big deal. Right, here's what we've got to do, he whispered urgently. One of us has got to keep an eye on Snape. Wait outside the staff room, and he'll follow him if he leaves it. Hermione, you'd better do that. Why me? It's obvious, said Ron. You can pretend to be waiting for Professor Flitwick, you know. He put on a high-pitched voice. Oh, Professor Flitwick, I was so worried. I think I got question 14B wrong. Shut up, said Hermione, but she agreed to go and watch out for Snape. And we'd better stay outside the third-floor corridor, said Harry told Ron. Come on. But that part of the plan didn't work. No sooner had they reached the door separating Fluffy from the rest of the school than Professor McGonagall turned up again, and this time she lost her temper. I suppose you think you're harder to get past than a pack of enchantments, she stormed. Enough of this nonsense. If I hear you've come anywhere near here again, I'll take another 50 points from Gryffindor. Yes, Weasley, from my own house. Harry and Ron went back to the common room. Harry had just said, at least Hermione's on Snape's tail, when the portrait of the fat lady swung open and Hermione came in. Told yous. I'm sorry, Harry, she wailed. Snape came out and asked me what I was doing, so I said I was just waiting for Flitwick, and Snape went to get him. I've only just got away. I don't know where Snape went. Well, that's it then, isn't it? Harry said. The other two stared at him. He was pale and his eyes were glittering. I'm going out of here tonight. I'm going to try and get the stone first. You're mad, said Ron. You can't, said Hermione. After what Professor McGonagall and Snape have said, you'll be expelled. He probably brags at dinner. The other team's like, I took 10,000 points from Gryffindor today. Oh god, yeah. That would be brilliant. I feel like that's sort of the thing that Snape would do, to be honest with you. It's like, oh, I took 10 points off that Hufflepuff for looking at me funny. Why are you like this? Especially the teachers that used to be in, Gryffindor. So like, Hagrid and Dumbledore in particular is like, stop it. Stop it, Minerva. Stop it. So what? Oh, feck's sake. I am not doing great mouth movements right now. It's not happening. I'm sorry. So what? Harry shouted. Don't you understand? If Snape gets hold of the stone, Voldemort's coming back. Haven't you heard what it was like when he was trying to take over? There won't be any Hogwarts to get expelled from. He'll flatten it, or turn it into a school of the dark arts. Losing points doesn't matter anymore. Can't you see? Do you think he'll leave you and your families alone if Gryffindor win the House Cup? If I get caught before I can get to the stone, well, I'll have to go back to the Dursleys and wait for Voldemort to find me there. It's only dying a bit later than I would have done, because I've never gone over to the I'm never going over to the dark side. I'm going through that trapdoor tonight, and nothing you two can say is going to stop me. Voldemort killed my parents, remember? He glared at them. You're right, Harry, said Hermione in a small voice. I'll use the invisibility cloak, said Harry. It's just lucky I got it back. But will it cover all three of us, said Ron. All three of us? Oh, come off it. You don't think we'll let you go alone? Luke? Did I say Luke? What did I say? I have no idea. Oh, Luke Skywalker. Right. Killed my parents. Yeah. Sorry, just remind me of, like, when you're being super dismissive of the other, you're like, okay, boomer. I'm never going over the dark side. And Voldemort's like, Harry, I am your father. Harry's like, no! You're right, the lack of a nose really does it. Everyone wanted Lily. It's true. She was very popular. Apparently too popular for her own good. Okay, where was I? You don't think we'd let you go alone? Of course not, said Hermione briskly. How do you think you'd get the stone without us? I'd better go and look through my books. There might be something useful. But if we get caught, you two will be expelled too. Not if I can help it, said Hermione grimly. Flitwick told me in secret that I got 112% on his exam. They're not throwing me out after that. Ooh, confident. Love it. After dinner, the three of them sat nervously apart in the common room. Nobody bothered them. None of the Gryffindors had anything to say to Harry anymore, after all. This was the first night he hadn't been upset by it. Hermione was skimming through all her notes, hoping to come across one of the enchantments they were about to try and break. Harry and Ron didn't talk much. Both of them were thinking about what they were about to do. Slowly the room emptied as people drifted off to bed. Better get the cloak, Ron muttered as Lee Jordan finally left, stretching and yawning. Harry ran upstairs to their dark dormitory. He pulled out the cloak, and then his eyes fell on the flute Hagrid had given him for Christmas. He pocketed pocketed it to use on Fluffy. He didn't feel much like singing. He ran back down to the common room. We'd better put the cloak on here. Make sure it covers all three of us. If Filch spots one of our feet wandering along on its own. What are you doing? Said a voice from the corner of the room. She's expelled. Hermione could kill Voldemort itself. She broke the rules and she died. She's expelled. It's true, like, doesn't matter if you're brilliant, you broke the rules. Honestly, the fact that they haven't been expelled during all of their time at Hogwarts is astonishing. And I'll be honest, I just, like, okay, sure, I'll admit it. Pottermore tells me I'm Slytherin, right? And the award ceremony at the end of the first book angers me. That lot broke the rules and they got rewarded for it. And Slytherin just didn't win. Just because like everyone's like, ooh, look at them, they're all heroes. They broke the rules. Of course, this is why the Avengers got in trouble. This is why the Avengers got in trouble, because they broke the rules and the government was like, nah, sign these papers. I did get Slytherin on Pottermore. I did. But that's just because I'm fantastic. Are you on Pottermore as well? I haven't actually used Pottermore for ages. I occasionally go back to it now and again to. Oh, this. Oh, thank you, sweetie. I do appreciate it. But how you been, Starbreeze? Yeah. I occasionally go back to it to like read about the wands, in particular. Like if Harry Potter was a real thing, and or the magical world was a real thing, I would absolutely be a wand maker. I would be so into that. You have no idea. It would be so cool. Wand lore would be an amazing thing to learn about. Mostly because a lot of the rules seem arbitrary, and that's interesting to me. Okay. You gotta create an account to get sorted. Do it. You can, I don't know if you can anymore, but I think you can also get your Ilvermorny house too, if you're familiar with it. Obviously, if you're remotely familiar with Fantastic Beasts, Ilvermorny is the American wizard school. The rules are transparent as long as you think you're saving the world. Of course. But I love the idea of, you know, magical objects like wands kind of having feelings and emotions. My wand in particular is so overly sensitive. It's Hazelwood and unicorn core, and basically if I die, my wand gets so depressed that it also dies. There's no chance of salvaging it if I die. It's gone forever. And also it's very empathetic, so it kind of plays up if depending on my emotions, apparently, according to Pottermore. It's, again, a very interesting wand, and I'm very attached to it, figuratively speaking. But yes, often the rules are very transparent if you're a good hero, because, you know, the rules don't apply to you if you're a hero, obviously. I'm not bitter about that at all. Anyway. Neville appeared from behind an armchair, clutching Trevor the Toad, who looked as though he'd been making another bid for freedom. "Nothing, Neville, nothing," said Harry hurriedly, putting the cloak behind his back. Neville stared at their guilty faces. You're going out again, he said. No, 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 said Hermione. No, we're not. Why don't you go to bed, Neville? Harry looked at the grandfather clock by the door. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. Snape might even now be playing Fluffy to sleep. You can't go out, said Neville. You'll be caught again. Gryffindor will be in even more trouble. You don't understand, said Harry. This is important. But Neville was clearly steeling himself to do something desperate. I won't let you do it, he said, hurrying to stand in front of the portrait hole. I'll fight you. Neville, Ron exploded. Get away from the hole. Get away from that hole. And don't be an idiot. Don't you call me an idiot, said Neville. I don't think you should be breaking any more rules. And you were the one who told me to stand up to people. Yes, but not to us, said Ron, in exasperation. Neville, you don't know what you're doing. He took a step forward and Neville dropped Trevor the Toad, who leapt out of sight. Go on then, try and hit me, said Neville, raising his fists. I'm ready. Harry turned to Hermione. Do something, he said desperately. Hermione stepped forward. Neville, she said, I'm really, really sorry about this. She raised her wand. Petrificus Totalis, she cried, pointing it at Neville. Neville's arm snapped to his sides and his legs sprang together, his whole body rigid. He swayed where he stood and then fell flat on his face, stiff as a board. Oh my God. You probably broke his nose. I wouldn't be shocked. But landing on your face, that's just cruel. Hermione ran to turn him over. Neville's jaws were jammed together so he couldn't speak. Only his eyes were moving, looking at them in horror. What have you done to him? Harry whispered. It's a full body bind, said Hermione miserably. Oh, Neville, I'm so sorry. Broke his nose, probably. Just flat on your face. You're not going to be able to, protect yourself as you fall. He's probably broken something. We had to, Neville. There's no time to explain, said Harry. You'll understand later, Neville, said Ron, as they stepped over him and pulled on the invisibility cloak. But leaving Neville lying motionless on the floor didn't feel like a very good omen. In their nervous state, every statue's shadow looked like Filch. Every distant breath of wind sounded like Peeves swooping down on them. At the foot of the first set of stairs, they spotted Mrs. Norris skulking near the top. Oh, let's kick her, just this once, Ron whispered in Harry's ear, but Harry shook his head. As they climbed carefully around her, Mrs. Norris turned her lamp-like eyes on them, but didn't do anything. They didn't meet anyone else until they reached the staircase up to the 3rd floor. Peeves was bobbing halfway up, loosening carpet so that people would trip. Who's there? He said suddenly, as they climbed towards him. He narrowed his wicked black eyes. Know you're there, even if I can't see you. Are you ghouly or ghosty or wee student beastie? He rose up in the air, floated there, and squinted at them. Should call Filch, I should, if something's a-creeping around unseen. Harry had a sudden idea. Peeves, he said in a hoarse whisper. The bloody Baron has his own reasons for being invisible. Peeves almost fell out of the air in shock. He caught himself in time and hovered about a foot off the stairs. So sorry, your bloodiness, Mr. Baron, sir, he said greasily. My mistake, I didn't see you. Of course I didn't, you're invisible. Forgive old Peevesy his little joke, sir. I have business here, Peeves, croaked Harry. Stay away from this place tonight. I will, sir. I most certainly will, said Peeves. rising up in the air again. Hope your business goes well, Baron. I'll not bother you. And he scooted off. I know! Peeves is completely wasted. They should have had him in the films. Unbelievable. He's so good. Peeves is great. He has his moments in the books too, you know. Brilliant, Harry, whispered Ron. A few seconds later they were there, outside the third-floor corridor, and the door was already ajar. Well, there you are, said Harry quietly. Snape's already got past Fluffy. Seeing the open door somehow seemed to impress upon all three of them what they were facing. Underneath the cloak, Harry turned to the other two. If you want to go back, I won't blame you, he said. You can take the cloak. I don't need it now. Don't be stupid, said Ron. We're coming, said Hermione. Harry pushed the door open. As the door creaked, low, rumbling growls met their ears. All three of the dogs' noses sniffed madly in their direction, even though it couldn't see him. What's that at its feet? Hermione whispered. It looks like a harp, said Ron. Snape must have left it there. It must wake up the moment you stop playing, said Harry. Well, here goes. He put Hagrid's flute to his lips and blew. It wasn't really a tune, but from the first note the beast's eyes began to droop. Harry hardly drew breath. Slowly the dog's growls ceased. It tottered on its paws and fell to its knees. Then it slumped to the ground, fast asleep. Keep playing, Ron warned Harry as they slipped off the cloak and crept towards the trapdoor. They could feel the dog's hot, smelly breath as they approached the giant heads. I think we'll be able to pull the door open, said Ron, peering at the dog's back. Want to go first, Hermione? No, I don't. All right, Ron gritted his teeth and stepped carefully over the dog's legs. He bent and pulled the ring of the trapdoor, which swung up and open. What can you see? Hermione said anxiously. Nothing, just black. There's no way of climbing down. We'll have to drop. Harry, who was still playing the flute, waved at Ron to get his attention and pointed at himself. You want to go first? Are you sure? Said Ron. I don't know how deep this thing goes. Give the flute to Hermione so she can keep him asleep. Harry handed the flute over. In a few seconds silence, the dog growled and twitched, but the moment Hermione began to play, it fell into a deep sleep. Harry climbed over and looked down through the trapdoor. There was no sign of the bottom. I don't know about you, but opening a trapdoor with no way down does not inspire me to want to jump into it. Like, ever. I don't think I would ever do that. Like, unless there was water at the bottom or something. Just get a broomstick. Love me a trapdoor. Ooh, there we go. Read that. He lowered himself through the hole until he was hanging on by his fingertips. Then he looked up at Ron and said, If anything happens to me, don't follow. Go straight to the owlery and send Hedwig to Dumbledore. Right? Right, said Ron. See you in a minute, I hope. Harry let go. Cold, damp air rushed past him as he fell down, and flump. With a funny, muffled sort of thump, he landed on something soft. He sat up and... Imagine if this is how they died, right? You don't even need magic. It's just do a really long hole. Someone will assume there's a bottom at some point. maybe jump down there like an idiot and then die. Or at least severely injure themselves and then bleed out or something. I don't know. That might just be, a Muggle perspective or something. But anyway. He sat up and felt around, his eyes not used to the gloom. It felt as though he was sitting on some sort of plant. "It's okay," he called up to the light the size of a postage stamp, which was the open trapdoor. "It's a soft landing. You can jump. You'd still seriously hurt yourself, probably, falling from that height." You just find their dead bodies at the bottom of a 100-foot pit, and they're like, damn. All these defenses, and the best one was building a dark pit and seeing which idiots didn't bother to use a broomstick to get down. Right? I mean, I can totally understand if the entrance is pretty narrow and they can't get a broomstick in there. The only other thing you could possibly do is apparate down there, but you also have to know where the bottom is and what it looks like to be able to apparate there. The good thing about apparation is that it has set rules. So that's something that they can't just get away with. That's true. You can't do that in Hogwarts anyway. But like, say it was like any old hole somewhere that you couldn't see the bottom of. You'd have to know what the bottom looked like before you could apparate down there. Just theoretically. Anyway, seems like this hole, if you didn't put a plant at the bottom of it, it would have been a solid defense. Okay. Alright, I'll stop getting distracted now. Dum. Are you sure? See you in a minute. It's a soft landing. You can jump. Ron followed straight away. He landed sprawled next to Harry. "What's this stuff?" were his first words. "Dunno. Sort of a plant thing." "I suppose it's here to break the fall. Come on, Hermione." The distant music stopped. There was a loud bark from the dog, but Hermione had already jumped. She landed on Harry's other side. "We must be miles under the school," she said. "Lucky this plant thing's here, really," said Ron. "Lucky?" shrieked Hermione. "Look at you both!" She leapt up and struggled towards a damp wall. She had to struggle because the moment she had landed, the plant had started to twist snake-like tendrils all around her ankles. As for Harry and Ron, their legs had already been bound tightly in long creepers without their noticing. They fell really, really far, because the trapdoor apparently looks about the size of a postage stamp, which is like this big? Possibly even smaller? It's like this big. I don't yeah, it's they fell a really long time. Right? That's what I said. They'd die anyway. Or at least be very, very injured. Doesn't matter how that friggin' plant must be so soft. Deceptively soft. Okay. As for, without their noticing, Hermione had managed to free herself, but before the plant got a firm grip on her. Now she watched in horror as the two boys fought to pull the plant off them. But the more they strained against it, the tighter and faster the plant wound around them. "Stop moving," Hermione ordered them. "I know what this is. It's Devil's Snare. It must be. Oh, I'm so glad we know what it's called. That's a great help, snarled Ron, leaning back, trying to stop the plant curling around his neck. Shut up! I'm trying to remember how to kill it, said Hermione. Well, hurry up! I can't breathe, Harry gasped, wrestling with it as it curled around his chest. Devil's Snare, Devil's Snare. What did Professor Sprout say? It likes the sun and the damp. So light a fire! Harry choked. Yes, of course, but there's no wood! Hermione cried, wringing her hands. Have you gone mad? Ron bellowed. Are you a witch or not? Oh, right, said Hermione. She whipped out her wand, waved it, and muttered something, and sent a jet of the same bluebell flames that she had used on Snape at the plant. In a matter of seconds, the two boys felt it loosening its grip as it cringed away from the light and the warmth. Wriggling and flailing, it unraveled itself from their bodies, and they were able to pull free. Lucky you pay attention in biology, Hermione, said Harry, as he joined her by the wall, wiping sweat off his face. Yeah, said Ron, and lucky Harry doesn't lose his head in a crisis. There's no wood. Honestly. It's a magic plant. They say it's magic. Right, yeah, that is the justification for most things. Magic. This way, said Harry, pointing down the stone passageway, which was the only way on. All they could hear, apart from their footsteps, was the gentle drip of water trickling down the walls. A passageway sloped downwards, and Harry was reminded of Gringotts, which was an unpleasant jolt of the heart. He remembered the dragons said to be guarding the vaults in the Wizard's Bank. If they met a dragon, a fully grown dragon, Norbert had been bad enough. Can you hear something? Ron whispered. Harry listened. A soft rustling and clinking seemed to be coming from up ahead. Do you think it's a ghost? I don't know. Sounds like wings to me. There's light ahead. I can see something moving. They reached the end of the passageway and saw before them a brilliantly lit chamber, its ceiling arched high above them. It was full of small, jewel-bright birds, fluttering and tumbling all around the room. On the opposite side of the chamber was a heavy wooden door. Do you think they'll attack us if we cross the room? Said Ron. Probably, said Harry. They don't look very vicious, but I suppose if they all swoop down at once. Well, there's nothing for it. I'll run. He took a deep breath, covered his face with his arms, and sprinted across the room. He expected to feel sharp beaks and claws tearing at him any second, but nothing happened. He reached the door untouched. He pulled the handle, but it was locked. The other two followed him. They tugged and heaved at the door, but it wouldn't budge, not even when Hermione tried to use her Alohomora charm. Now what? Said Ron. These birds. They can't be here just for decoration, said Hermione. They watched the birds soaring overhead, glittering. Glittering? They're not birds, said Harry suddenly. They're keys, winged keys. Look carefully. So that must mean... He looked around the chamber while the other two squinted up at the flock of keys. Yes, look, broomsticks. We've got to catch the key to the door. But there are hundreds of them. Ron examined the lock on the door. We're looking for a big old-fashioned one, probably silver, like the handle. They seized a broomstick each and kicked off into the air, soaring into the midst of the cloud of keys. God, This sentence is a tongue twister and a half. They grabbed and snatched, but the bewitched keys darted and dived so quickly that it was almost impossible to catch one. Not for nothing, though, was Harry the youngest seeker in a century. He had a knack for spotting things other people didn't. After a minute's weaving about through a whirl of rainbow feathers, he noticed a large silver key that had a bent wing, as if it had already been caught and stuffed roughly into the keyhole. "That's the one!" he called to the others. "That big one! There! No, there! With the bright blue wings! The feathers all crumpled on one side!" Ron went speeding in the direction that Harry was pointing, and crashed into the ceiling and nearly fell off his broom. "We've got to get close in on it," said Harry called, not taking his eyes off the key that was with the damaged wing. "Ron, you come at it from above. Hermione, you stay below and stop it going down. I'll try and catch it. Right, now!" Ron dived, Hermione rocketed upwards, and the key dodged them both, and Harry streaked after it. It sped towards the wall. Harry leant forward, and with a nasty crunching noise, pinned it against the stone with one hand. Ron and Hermione's cheers echoed around the high chamber. They landed quickly, and Harry ran to the door with the key struggling in his hand. He rammed it into the lock and turned. It worked. The moment the lock had clicked open, the key took flight again, looking very battered now that it had been caught twice. "Ready?" Harry asked. I was picturing all three of them zooming at the key in different directions, smashing together. That would have been great. It really would have. But you know, now's not the time. We're at the important part now. The end game. We can't have fun times. Ready? Harry asked the other two, his hand on the door handle. They nodded and pulled the door open. The next chamber was so dark that they couldn't see a thing at all. But as they stepped into it, the light suddenly flooded the room to reveal an astonishing sight. They were standing on the edge of a huge chessboard, behind the black chessmen, which were all taller than they were, and carved from what looked like black stone. Facing them way across the chamber were the white pieces. Harry, Ron, and Hermione shivered slightly. The towering white chessmen had no faces. "Now what do we do?" Harry whispered. "It's obvious, isn't it?" said Ron. "We've got to play our way across the room." Behind the white pieces they could see another door. "How?" said Hermione. "I think," said Ron, "we're going to have to be chessmen." He walked up to the Black Knight and put his hand out to touch the knight's horse. At once the stone sprang to life. The horse pawed the ground, and the knight turned his helmet to look down at Ron. "Do we have to join you to get across?" The Black Knight nodded. Ron turned to the other two. "This wants thinking about," he said. "I suppose we've got to take the pace of 3 of the black pieces." Harry and Hermione stayed quiet, watching Ron think. Finally, he said, "Now don't be offended or anything, but neither of you are that good at chess." "We're not offended," said Harry quickly. "Just tell us what to do." "Well, Harry, you take the place of that bishop, and Hermione, you go next to him instead of that castle. What about you?" "I'm going to be a knight," said Ron. The chessmen seemed to have been listening, because at these words a knight, a bishop, and a castle turned their backs on the white pieces and walked off the board, leaving 3 empty squares, which Harry, Ron, and Hermione took. It was cooler in the books. No, I remember I played Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone on an emulator for the channel when I hit 50 followers. So that was super fun. We got through the entire game, but it was 3 chessboards, and the last one really got me. I think I had a viewer at the time, who actually had to walk me through it because I just could not do it. Those pieces are extremely expendable. So yes, some of them, but the thing about the back pieces is obviously the maneuverability. If you get cornered as a pawn, you're a bit stuffed. But with some of the other pieces, you can get away with it a little bit more. Which Harry and Ron took. White always plays first in chess, said Ron, peering across the board. Yes, look. A white pawn had moved forward 2 squares. Which is what you can do with pawns. That's like their main thing. On their, I think, I'm not sure if it's like the first go overall, or just the first time you move a particular pawn, but you can move them 2 squares at first, and then it's 1 square after that. You use pawns like a fence. In theory, yes, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not very good at chess at all. I'm complete crap at it, to be honest with you. I'm lucky I even know what the pieces do. Which, by the way, the rules of which they completely ignore in the game. Doesn't matter in the game. It really ticked me off. If you're still a beginner, usually you use pawns like cannon fodder. This is true, yeah. I generally attempt to use pawns to, you know, force the player to make moves that I need them to make so my better pieces can get to them or something like that. I don't know. I don't have any like maneuvers. Like have you ever seen what's that show that was on Netflix or whatever, but it was about that girl who was really good at chess? Gambit, that's the one. Gambit. Definitely not at that level at all, even remotely. They've got entire books on the subject of chess that you can be like, this is a maneuver, and this is a maneuver, and this is a maneuver, and good luck with that. Northline likes to play chess online on YouTube. Gambit is a really, really good watch. I highly recommend it. It's so good if you haven't seen it already. I really enjoyed watching it on YouTube, and it's super fun watching him throw his pieces away and win. Sweet! A white pawn had moved forward 2 squares. Ron started to direct the black pieces. They moved silently wherever he sent them. Harry's knees were trembling. What if they lost? Harry, move diagonally 4 squares to the right. Their first real shock came when their other knight was taken. The white queen smashed him into the floor and dragged him off the board, where he lay quite still, face down. Had to let that happen, said Ron, looking shaken. Leaves you free to take that bishop. Hermione, go on. Every time one of their men was lost, the white pieces showed no mercy. Soon there was a huddle of limp black players slumped along the side wall. Twice, Ron only just noticed in time that Harry and Hermione were in danger. He himself darted around the board, taking almost as many white pieces as they lost black ones. We're nearly there, he muttered suddenly. Let me think. The white queen turned her blank face toward him. Yes, said Ron softly. It's the only way. I've got to be taken. No! Harry and Hermione shouted. That's chess, snapped Ron. You've got to make some sacrifices. I take one step forward, she'll take me. That leaves you free to checkmate the king, Harry. But do you want to stop Snape or not? Ron! Look, if you don't hurry up, he'll already have the stone. There's nothing else for it. Ready? Ron called, his face pale but determined. Here I go. Now, don't hang around once you've won. The White Queen is McGonagall in disguise. Merciless! I love it. He stepped forward, and the White Queen pounced. She struck Ron hard around the head with her stone arm, and he crashed to the floor. See, this injury is way more violent than the one in the book, because the Queen than the one in the film. Because the Queen in the film just kind of stabs the horse and he falls off. And I'm like, okay. He's probably fine. Maybe he's got a cut from the ceramic horse or something, but he's fine. This, though, is blatant head trauma. He's a weakling in the movie. This is like the wizard form of like football, where he's got to fall off and make a huge scene, so the ref could just wave like a red card or something. In the book, he gets wrecked. He really does. He really does. But honestly, he was only a child actor, and you can't really hit them with swords. Let's be honest. However real or not. And he crashed to the floor. Hermione screamed, but stayed on her square. The White Queen dragged Ron to one side. He looked as if he'd been knocked out. Shaking, Harry moved 3 spaces to the left. The White King took off his crown and threw it at Harry's feet. They had won. The chessmen parted and bowed, leaving the door ahead clear. With one last desperate look at Ron, Harry and Hermione charged through the door and up the next passageway. What if he'll be all right, said Harry, trying to convince himself. What do you reckon's next? We've had sprouts, that was the double snare. Flitwick must have put the charms on the keys. McGonagall transfigured the chessmen to make them alive. That leaves Quirrell's spell and Snape's. They had reached another door. All right, Harry whispered. Go on. Harry pushed it open. A disgusting smell filled their nostrils, making both of them pull their robes up over their noses. Eyes watering, they saw, flat on the floor in front of them, a troll even larger than the one that they had tackled, out cold with a bloody lump on his forehead. On his head. Oh dear. I'm glad we didn't have to fight that one, Harry whispered, as they stepped carefully over one of its massive legs. Come on, I can't breathe. There was no potions puzzle in the movie either, nor was there a troll. He pulled open the next door, both of them hardly daring to look at what came next. But there was nothing very frightening in here. Just a table with 7 differently shaped bottles standing in a line. Snape, said Harry. What do we have to do? They stepped over the threshold, and immediately a fire sprang up behind them in the doorway. It wasn't ordinary fire either. It was purple. At the same instant, black flames shot up in the doorway leading onwards. They were trapped. Look! Hermione seized a roll of paper lying next to the bottles. Harry looked over her shoulder to read it. Danger lies before you, while safety lies behind. 2 of us will help you, whichever you would find. One among us, 7, will let you move ahead. Another will transport the drinker back instead. 2 among our number hold only nettle wine. 3 of us are killers, waiting hidden in line. Choose unless you wish to stay here forevermore. To help you in your choice, we give you these clues 4. First, however slyly the poison tries to hide, you will always find some on nettle wine's left side. Second, different are those who stand at either end. But if you would move onwards, neither is your friend. Third, as you see clearly, are different size. All are different size. Neither dwarf nor giant hold death in their insides. Fourth, the second left and the second on the right are twins once you taste them, though different at first sight. Right? These, I really love the potion puzzle. As a person who loves puzzles, but is completely garbage at them, I absolutely would have killed myself doing this puzzle if I didn't kill myself doing any of the others. But I do appreciate a good logic puzzle, let's be honest. Hermione let out a great sigh, and Harry was amazed. Harry, amazed, saw that she was smiling. The very last thing he felt like doing. Brilliant, said Hermione. This isn't magic, it's logic, a puzzle. A lot of the greatest wizards haven't got an ounce of logic. They'd be stuck in here forever. But so will we, won't we? Of course not, said Hermione. Everything we need is here on this paper. 7 bottles. 3 are poison, 2 are wine. 1 will get us safely through the black fire, and 1 will get us safely through the purple. But how do we know which to drink? Give me a minute. Hermione read the paper several times. Hermione is smart. Then she walked up and down the line of bottles, muttering to herself and pointing at them. At last she clapped her hands. Got it, she said. The smallest bottle will get us through the black fire towards the stone. Harry looked at the tiny bottle. That's only enough for 1 of us, he said. That's hardly 1 swallow. They looked at each other. Which one will get you back through the purple flames? Hermione pointed at a round bottle at the right end of the line. You drink that, said Harry. No, listen. Go back and get Ron. Grab the brooms from the flying key room. They'll get you out of the trapdoor and past Fluffy. Go straight to the Owlery and send Hedwig to Dumbledore. We need him. I might be able to hold Snape off for a while, but I'm no match for him, really. But Harry, what if you know who is with him? Well, I was lucky once, wasn't I? Said Harry, pointing at the scar. I might get lucky again. Magic. Where was I? I might get lucky again. Hermione's lip trembled as she suddenly dashed at Harry and threw her arms around him. Hermione! Harry, you're a great wizard, you know. I'm not as good as you, said Harry, very embarrassed as she let it go of him. Me, said Hermione. Books and cleverness. There are more important things. Friendship and bravery and... Oh, Harry, be careful. You drink first, said Harry. You are sure which is which, aren't you? Positive, said Hermione. She took a long drink from the round bottle at the end and shuddered. Not poison? Said Harry anxiously. No, but it's like ice. Quick, go, before it wears off. Good luck. Take care. Go! Hermione turned and walked straight through the purple fire. Harry took a deep breath and picked the smallest bottle. He turned to face the black flames. "Here I come," he said, and he drained the little bottle in one gulp. It was indeed as though ice was flooding through his body. He put the bottle down and walked forward. He braced himself. He saw the black flames licking his body, but couldn't feel them. For a moment he could see nothing but dark fire. Then he was on the other side, in the last chamber. There was already someone there. But it wasn't Snape. It wasn't even Voldemort. It's okay. The silence will come soon, I promise. Not long now. Chapter 17. The Man with Two Faces. It was Quirrell. "You!" gasped Harry. Quirrell smiled. His face wasn't twitching at all. "Me," he said calmly. "I wondered whether I'd be meeting you here, Potter. But I thought, Snape." "Severus?" Quirrell laughed, and it wasn't his usual quivering tremble either, but cold and sharp. "Yes, Severus does seem the type, doesn't he? So useful to have him swooping around when like an overgrown bat. Next to him, who would suspect poor, stuttering Professor Quirrell?" Harry couldn't take it in. This couldn't be true, could it? "But Snape tried to kill me." No. I tried to kill you. Your friend, Miss Granger, accidentally knocked me over while she was rushing to set fire to Snape at that Quidditch match. She broke my eye contact with you. Another few seconds and I'd have had you off that broom. I'd have managed it before then if Snape hadn't been muttering a counter curse trying to save you." "Snape was trying to save me?" "Of course," said Quirrell coldly. "Why do you think he wanted to referee your next match?" "He was trying to make sure I didn't do it again. Funny, really. He needn't have bothered. I couldn't do anything with Dumbledore watching. All the other teachers thought Snape was trying to stop Gryffindor winning. He did make himself unpopular. And what a waste of time, when after all that I'm going to kill you tonight." Quirrell snapped his fingers. Ropes sprang out of thin air and wrapped themselves tightly around Harry. "You're too nosy to live, Potter, scurrying around the school at Halloween like that. For all I know, you knew you'd seen me coming to look at what was guarding the stone." "You let the troll in?" "Certainly. I have a special gift with trolls. You must have seen what I did to the one in the chamber back there. Unfortunately, while everyone else was running around looking for it, Snape, who already suspected me, went straight to the 3rd floor to head me off. And not only did my troll fail to beat you to death, that 3-headed dog didn't even manage to bite Snape's leg off properly. Now, wait quietly, Potter. I need to examine this interesting mirror." It was only then that Harry realized what was standing behind Quirrell. It was the mirror of Erised. "The mirror is the key to finding the stone," Quirrell murmured, tapping his way around the frame. "Trust Dumbledore to come up with something like this. But he's in London. I'll be far away by the time he gets back." All Harry could think of doing was to keep Quirrell talking and stop him from concentrating on the mirror. "I saw you and Snape in the forest," he blurted out. "Yes," said Quirrell idly, walking around the mirror to look at the back. "He was onto me by that time, trying to find out how far I'd got. He suspected me all along. Tried to frighten me, as though he could, when I had Lord Voldemort on my side." Quirrell came back out from behind the mirror and stared hungrily into it. "I see the stone. I'm presenting it to my master. But where is it?" Harry struggled against the ropes binding him, but they didn't give. He had to keep Quirrell from giving his whole attention to the mirror. But Snape always seemed to hate me so much. Oh, he does, said Quirrell casually. Heavens, yes. He was at Hogwarts with your father, didn't you know? They loathed each other. But he never wanted you dead. I'm going to reveal my dastardly plans and explain all your confusions to tell you about the time I had a weird green bug on a boulder. He started to explode. Oh, Quirrell's having a time, is he then? Sorry, where it's going for them. But I heard you a few days ago, sobbing. I thought Snape was threatening you. The first time, a spasm of fear flitted across Quirrell's face. Sometimes, he said, I find it hard to follow my master's instructions. He is a great wizard, and I am weak. You mean he was there in the classroom with you? Harry gasped. He is with me wherever I go, said Quirrell quietly. I met him when I travelled around the world. A foolish young man I was then, full of ridiculous ideas about good and evil. Voldemort showed me how wrong I was. There is no good and evil. There is only power, and those too weak to seek it. Since then I have served him faithfully, although I have let him down many times. He has had to be very hard on me. Quirrell shivered suddenly. He does not forgive mistakes easily. When I failed to steal the stone from Gringotts, he was most displeased. He punished me, decided he would have to keep a closer watch on me. Quirrell's voice trailed away. Harry was remembering his trip to Diagon Alley. How could he have been so stupid? He'd seen Quirrell there on that very day, shaken hands with him in the leaky cauldron. Quirrell cursed under his breath. I don't understand. Is the stone inside the mirror? Should I break it? Dum. Sorry, I've lost my place again. Harry's mind was racing. What I want more than anything else in the world at this moment, he thought, is to find the stone before Quirrell does. So if I look in the mirror, I should see myself finding it, which means I'll see where it's hidden. And how can I look without Quirrell realizing what I'm up to? My boss sucks. He's always punishing me and asking me to work overtime and threatening not to pay me. Oh boy. Where am I? He tried to edge to the left, to get in front of the glass without Quirrell noticing, but the ropes around his ankles were too tight. He tripped and fell over. Quirrell ignored him, but he was still talking to himself. What does this mirror do? How does it work? Help me, master! And, to Harry's horror, a voice answered. The voice seemed to come from Quirrell himself. Use the boy. Use the boy. Squirrel! It's Squirrel! My name's not Squirrel. Promise. Promise it's not. Quirrell rounded on Harry. Yes, Potter, come here. He clapped his hands once and the ropes binding Harry fell off. Harry got slowly to his feet. Come here, Quirrell repeated. Look in the mirror and tell me what you see. Harry walked towards them. I must lie, he thought desperately. I must look and lie about what I see. That's all. Quirrell moved close behind him. Harry breathed in a funny smell that seemed to come from Quirrell's turban. He closed his eyes and stepped in front of the mirror and opened them again. He saw his reflection, pale and scared looking at first, but a moment later the reflection smiled at him. It put its hand into its pocket and pulled out a blood-red stone. It winked and put the stone back in its pocket. And as it did so, Harry felt something heavy drop into his real pocket. Somehow, incredibly, he'd got the stone. "Well?" said Quirrell impatiently. "What do you see?" Harry screwed up his courage. "I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore," he invented. "I've won the House Cup for Gryffindor." Quirrell cursed again. "Get out of the way," he said. As Harry moved aside, he felt the Philosopher's Stone against his leg. Dare he make a break for it? But he hadn't walked 5 paces before a high voice spoke, as though Quirrell wasn't moving his lips. "Lies! He lies!" "Potter, come back here!" Quirrell shouted. "Squirrel! Tell me the truth. What did you just see?" The high voice spoke again. "Let me speak to him, face to face. Master, you are not strong enough. I have strength enough for this." Harry felt as if Devil's Snare was rooting him to the spot. He couldn't move a muscle. Petrified, he watched as Quirrell reached up and began to unwrap his turban. What was going on? The turban fell away. Quirrell's head looked strangely small without it. Then he turned slowly on the spot. Harry would have screamed, but he couldn't make a sound. Where there should have been the back of Quirrell's head, there was a face. The most terrible face Harry had ever seen. It was chalk white, with glaring red eyes and slits-like nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter," it whispered. Harry tried to step backwards, but his legs wouldn't move. "I see what I have become," the face said, "mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I can share another's body. But there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Unicorn blood has strengthened me. These past weeks, you saw faithful Quirrell drinking it for me in the forest. And once I have the elixir of life, I will be able to create a body of my own. Now, why don't you give me that stone in your pocket?" So he knew. The feeling suddenly surged back into Harry's legs, and he stumbled backwards. "Don't be a fool!" snarled the face. "Better save your own life and join me, or you'll meet the same end as your parents. They died begging me for mercy." "Liar!" Harry shouted suddenly. Quirrell was walking backwards at him, so that Voldemort could still see him. The evil face was now smiling. "How touching," it hissed. "I always valued bravery. Yes, boy, your parents were brave. I killed your father first, and he put up a courageous fight, but your mother needn't have died. She was trying to protect you. Now give me the stone, unless you want her to have died in vain." "Never!" Harry sprang toward the flame door, but Voldemort screamed, "Seize him!" And next second, Harry felt Quirrell's hand close on his wrist. At once, a needle-sharp pain seared across Harry as his head felt as though it was about to split in two. He yelled, struggling with all his might, and to his surprise, Quirrell let go of him. The pain in his head lessened. He looked around wildly to see where Quirrell had gone, and saw him hunched in pain, looking at his fingers. They were blistering before his eyes. "Seize him! Seize him!" shrieked Voldemort again, and Quirrell lunged, knocking Harry clean off his feet, landing on top of him, both hands around Harry's neck. Harry's scar was almost blinding him with pain, yet he could see Quirrell howling in agony. "Master, I cannot hold him! My hands! My hands!" And Quirrell, though pinning Harry to the ground with his knees, let go of his neck and stared, bewildered, at his own palms. Harry could see that they looked burnt, raw and red and shiny. "Then kill him, fool, and be done!" shrieked Voldemort. Quirrell raised his hand to perform a deadly curse, but Harry, by instinct, reached up and grabbed Quirrell's face. Ah! Quirrell rolled off him, his face blistering too, and then Harry knew Quirrell couldn't touch his bare skin, not without suffering terrible pain. His only chance was to keep hold of Quirrell, keep him in enough pain to stop him doing a curse. Harry jumped to his feet, caught Quirrell by the arm, and hung on as tight as he could. Quirrell screamed and tried to throw Harry off. The pain in Harry's head was building. He couldn't see. He could only hear Quirrell's terrible shrieks and Voldemort's yells of "Kill him! Kill him!" and other voices, maybe in Harry's own head, crying, "Harry! Harry!" He felt Quirrell's arm wrenched from his grasp. He knew all was lost, and he fell into blackness. Down, down, down. Something gold was glittering just above him. The snitch! He tried to catch it, but his arms were too heavy. He blinked. It wasn't the snitch at all. It was a pair of glasses. How strange. He blinked again. The smiling face of Albus Dumbledore swam into view above him. "Good afternoon, Harry," said Dumbledore. Harry stared at him, and then he remembered. "Sir, the stone! It was Quirrell! He got the stone! Sir, quick!" She grabbed it. "Calm yourself, dear boy. You are a little behind the times," said Dumbledore. "Quirrell does not have the stone." "Then who does, sir? "Harry, please relax, or Madame Pomfrey will have me thrown out." Harry swallowed and looked around him. He realized he must be in the hospital wing. He was lying in a bed with white linen sheets, and next to him was a table piled high with what looked like half a sweet shop. "Tokens from your friends and admirers," said Dumbledore, beaming. "What happened down in the dungeons between you and Professor Quirrell is a complete secret. So, naturally, the whole school knows. I believe your friends, Mr. Fred and George Weasley, were responsible for trying to send you a lavatory seat. No doubt they thought it would amuse you. Madame Pomfrey, however, felt it might not be very hygienic, and confiscated it." "How long have I been in here?" 3 days. Mr. Ronald and Mrs. Granger will be most relieved that you have come around. They have been extremely worried. But, sir, the stone—" "I see you are not to be distracted. Very well, the stone. Professor Quirrell did not manage to take it from you. I arrived in time to prevent that. Although you were doing very well on your own, I must say." "You got there? You got Hermione's owl?" "We must have crossed in mid-air. No sooner had I reached London than it became clear to me that the place I should be was the one I had just left. I arrived just in time to pull Quirrell off you." "It was you?" "I feared I might be too late." "You nearly were. I couldn't have kept him off the stone much longer." "Not the stone, boy. You. The effort involved nearly killed you. For one terrible moment there, I was afraid it had. As for the stone, it has been destroyed." "Destroyed?" said Harry blankly. "But your friend, Nicholas Flamel." "Oh, you know about Nicholas." Yeah, it's a good explanation. So, that would be hilarious, though. Just Harry reaching up, going, "Ah!" Glasses just smacking Dumbledore in the face. Oh, you know about Nicholas, said Dumbledore, sounding quite delighted. You did do the thing properly, didn't you? Well, Nicholas and I have had a little chat and agreed it's all for the best. But that means he and his wife will die, won't they? They have enough elixir stored to set their affairs in order. And then, yes, they will die. Dumbledore smiled at the look of amazement on Harry's face. To one as young as you, I'm sure it seems incredible, but to Nicholas and Perenelle, it really is like going to bed after a very, very long day. After all, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. As much money and life as you could want. The two things most human beings would choose above all. The trouble is, humans do have a knack for choosing precisely those things which are worst for them. Harry lay there, lost for words. Dumbledore hummed a little and smiled at the ceiling. Sorry, I hiccuped there for a second. Sir, said Harry, I've been thinking, sir, even if the stones... Oh, it tried to make me skip a page. I will not allow it. Even if the stone's gone, well, I mean, you know who. Call him Voldemort, Harry. Always use the proper name for things. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. Yes, sir. Well, Voldemort's going to try other ways of coming back, isn't he? I mean, he hasn't gone, has he? No, Harry, he is not. He is still out there somewhere, perhaps looking for another body to share. Not being truly alive, he can't be killed. He left Quirrell to die. He shows just as little mercy to his followers as his enemies. Nevertheless, Harry, while you may only have delayed his return to power, it will merely take someone else who is prepared to fight for what seems like a losing battle next time. And if he is delayed again and again, why, he may never return to power. Harry nodded, but stopped quickly because it made his head hurt. Then he said, Sir, there are some other things I'd like to know. If you can tell me. Things I want to know the truth about. The truth. Poor Squirrel. Indeed. Dumbledore sighed. It is a beautiful and terrible thing, and should therefore be treated with great caution. However, I shall answer your questions unless I have a very good reason not to. In which case, I beg you'll forgive me. I shall not, of course, lie. Well, Voldemort said that he only killed my mother because she tried to stop him killing me. But why would he want to kill me in the first place? Dumbledore sighed very deeply this time. Alas, the first thing you ask I cannot tell you. Not today, not now. You will know one day. Put it from your mind for now, Harry. When you are older, I know you hate to hear this. When you are ready, you will know. And Harry knew it would be no good to argue. But why couldn't Quirrell touch me? Your mother died to save you. There is one thing Voldemort cannot understand. It is love. He didn't realize that love as powerful as your mother's for you leaves its own mark. Not a scar, no visible sign. To have been loved so deeply, even though the person who loved us is gone, will give us some protection forever. It is in your skin. It is in your very skin. Quirrell, full of hatred and greed and ambition, sharing his soul with Voldemort, could not touch you for this reason. It was agony to touch a person marked by something so good. Grindelwald. Dumbledore now became very interested in a bird on the windowsill, which gave Harry time to dry his eyes on the sheet. When he had found his voice again, Harry said, "And the invisibility cloak, do you know who sent it to me?" "Ah, your father happened to leave it in my possession, and I thought you might like it." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Useful things. Your father used it mainly for sneaking off to the kitchens to steal food when he was here. And there's something else. Fire away." "Quirrell said Snape—" "Professor Snape, Harry." "Yes, him. Quirrell said he hates me because he hated my father. Is that true?" "Well, they did rather detest each other, not unlike yourself and Mr. Malfoy. And then your father did something Snape could never forgive." "What?" "He saved his life." "What?" "Yes," said Dumbledore dreamily. "Funny the way people's mind work, isn't it? Professor Snape couldn't bear being in your father's debt. I do believe he worked so hard to protect you this year because he felt that it would make him and your he felt it would make him and your father quit. Then he could go back to hating your father's memory in peace." Harry tried to understand this, but it made his head pound, so he stopped. That person that people call Professor Snape. that thing people call a professor. You know, what's his name? "And sir, there's one more thing. Just the one. How did I get the stone out of the mirror?" "Ah, now. I'm glad you asked me that. It was one of my more brilliant ideas, and between you and me, that's saying something. You see, only one who wanted to find it, but not use it, would be able to get it. Otherwise, they'd just see them. They'd see themselves making gold or drinking the elixir of life. My brain surprises even me sometimes. Now, enough questions. I suggest you make a start on these sweets. Ah, Bertie Bott's every flavoured beans. I was unfortunate enough in my youth to come across a vomit-flavoured one, and since then I'm afraid I've rather lost my liking for them. But I think I'll be safe with a nice toffee, don't you?" He smiled and put the golden brown bean into his mouth. Then he choked and said, "Alas, earwax." Madame Pomfrey, the matron, was a nice woman, but very strict. Just 5 minutes. Sorry, just 5 minutes, Harry pleaded. "Absolutely not." "You let Professor Dumbledore in?" "Well, of course. That was the headmaster. Quite different. You need rest." "I am resting. Look, lying down and everything." "Oh, go on, Madame Pomfrey." "Oh, very well," she said, "but 5 minutes only." And she let Ron and Hermione in. "Harry!" Hermione looked ready to fling her arms around him again, but Harry was glad that she held herself in, as his head was still very sore. "Oh, Harry, we were sure you were going to... Dumbledore was so worried." "The whole school's talking about it," said Ron. "What really happened?" It was one of those rare occasions when a true story was even more strange and exciting than the wild rumors. Harry told them everything. Quirrell, the mirror, the stone, and Voldemort. Ron and Hermione were a very good audience. They gasped in all the right places, and when Harry told them what was under Quirrell's turban, Hermione screamed out loud. "So the stone's gone," said Ron finally. "Flamel's just going to die." "That's what I said, but Dumbledore thinks that... What was it? To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure." "I always said he was off his rocker," said Ron, looking quite impressed at how mad his hero was. So what happened So what happened to you two? Well, I got back all right, said Hermione. I brought Ron round and took a while. And we were dashing up to the owlery to contact Dumbledore when we met him in the entrance hall. He already knew. He just said, Harry's gone after him, hasn't he? And hurtled off to the 3rd floor. Yes, it was all a ploy to murder Flamel and his wife. Do you think he meant you to do it? Said Ron. Sending your father's cloak and everything. Well, Hermione exploded. If he did, I mean to say, that's terrible. You could have been killed. No, it isn't, said Harry thoughtfully. He's a funny man, Dumbledore. I think he sort of wanted to give me a chance. I think he knows more or less everything that goes on here, you know. I reckon he had a pretty good idea we were going to try. And instead of stopping us, he just taught us enough to help. I don't think it was an accident he let me find out how the mirror worked. It's almost like he thought I had the right to face Voldemort if I could. Yeah, Dumbledore's barking all right, said Ron proudly. Listen, you've got to be up for the end of year feast tomorrow. The points are all in, and Slytherin's won, of course. You missed the last Quidditch match. We were steamrolled by Ravenclaw without you. But the food'll be good. At that moment, Madame Pomfrey bustled over. You've had nearly 15 minutes now. Out, she said firmly. After a good night's sleep, Harry felt nearly back to normal. I want to go to the feast, he told Madame Pomfrey, as she straightened his many sweet boxes. I can, can't I? Professor Dumbledore says you ought to be allowed to go, she said sniffily. As though in her opinion, Professor Dumbledore didn't realize how risky feasts could be. And you have another visitor. Oh, good, said Harry. Who is it? Hagrid sidled through the door as he spoke. As usual, when he was indoors, Hagrid looked too big to be allowed, and sat down next to Harry. Took one look at him and burst into tears. It's all my bloody fault, he sobbed, his face in his hands. I told the evil git how to get past Fluffy. I told him. It was the only thing he didn't know, and I told him. You could have died. All for a dragon egg. I'll never drink again. I should be chucked out and made to live as a muggle. Oh, Hagrid, you should be. You shouldn't even have his umbrella. You shouldn't have it. Don't do that. Your mistakes are comical at best. Devastating at worst. Oh my god, where is it? All my bloody fault. Hagrid, said Harry, shocked to see Hagrid shaking with grief and remorse, great tears leaking down into his beard. Hagrid, he'd have found out somehow. This is Voldemort we're talking about. He'd have found out. Why couldn't you just kill the dog? Like, I'm not being funny, but you could have just... There are curses for that. It's an option. I mean, there's that way. But, you know, Avada Kedavra's always, you know, a good backup. Never really... Why didn't you consider that one? But okay, maybe he's... The dog is death-proof? Anyway, just my thoughts on the subject. You could have died, sobbed Hagrid. And don't say the name! Voldemort! Harry bellowed, and Hagrid was so shocked he stopped crying. I've met him and I'm calling him by his name. Please cheer up, Hagrid. We saved the stone. It's gone. He can't use it. Have a chocolate frog. I've got loads. Hagrid wiped his nose on the back of his hand and said, That reminds me, I've got you a present. It's not a stout sandwich, is it? Said Harry anxiously. And at last Hagrid gave a weak chuckle. Nah, Dumbledore gave me the day off yesterday to fix it. Of course, he should have sacked me instead. Anyway, got you this. It seemed to be a handsome leather-covered book. Harry opened it curiously, it was full of wizard photographs, smiling and waving at him from every page were his mother and father. Sent owls off to all your parents' old school friends asking for photos. Knew you didn't have any. Do you like it? Harry couldn't speak, but Hagrid understood. They were just too alive. They were only too alive for a little bit, and then they calmed down. They calmed down enough for you to eat them. But I did love it when they released when Cadbury's did the chocolate frogs, because at first they did those they did them like Freddos, or it was just a block of wood, and then it was just a little tree frog type thing. And later on they released the hollow ones, which were less fun in my opinion, because I think there was less chocolate involved, but that's just me. But I kind of do miss the chocolate frogs that they released. Anywho, Harry made his way down to the end-of-year feast alone that night. He had been held up by Madame Pomfrey's fussing about, insisting on giving him one last checkup, so the Great Hall was all ready for. It was decked out in the Slytherin colours of green and silver to celebrate Slytherin's winning the House Cup for the 7th year in a row. A huge banner showing the Slytherin serpent covered the wall behind the high table. When Harry walked in, there was a sudden hush, and then everybody started to talk loudly at once. Started talking loudly at once. He slipped into a seat between Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table and tried to ignore the fact that people were standing up to look at him. Fortunately, Dumbledore arrived moments later. The babble died away. "Another year gone," said Dumbledore cheerfully. "And I must trouble you with an old man's wheezing waffle before you sink your teeth into our delicious feast. What a year it has been! Hopefully your heads are a little fuller than they were. You have the whole summer ahead of you to get them nice and empty before the next year starts. Now, as I understand it, the House Cup here needs awarding, and the points stand thus. In 4th place, Gryffindor with 312 points. In 3rd, Hufflepuff with 352. Ravenclaw have 426 points, and Slytherin 472. Came at a good time. You sure did! Hi, pretty! Sorry, there was a cat. She was just kind of hanging about. A storm of cheering and stamping broke out from the Slytherin table. Harry could see Draco Malfoy banging his goblet on the table. It was a sickening sight. "Yes, well done, Slytherin," said Dumbledore. "However, recent events must be taken into account." The room went very still. The Slytherin smiles faded a little. "Ahem," said Dumbledore. "I have a few last-minute points to dish out. Let me see. Yes, first, to Mr. Ronald Weasley." Ron went purple in the face. He looked like a radish with bad sunburn. "For the best played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years, I award Gryffindor House 50 points. That's cheating. I know, it is! Gryffindor cheers nearly raised the bewitched ceiling. The stars overhead seemed to quiver. Percy could be heard telling the other prefects, "My brother, you know, my youngest brother, got past McGonagall's giant chess set." At last there was silence again. Second, to Miss Hermione Granger, for the use of cool logic in the face of fire, I award Gryffindor House 50 points. Hermione buried her face in her arms. Harry strongly suspected she had burst into tears. Gryffindors up and down the table were beside themselves. They were 100 points up. Third, to Mr. Harry Potter, said Dumbledore. The room went deadly quiet. For pure nerve and outstanding courage, I award Gryffindor House 60 points. The din was deafening. Those who could add up while yelling themselves hoarse knew that Gryffindor now had 472 points, exactly the same as Slytherin. They had drawn for the House Cup. If only Dumbledore had given Harry just one more point. Dumbledore raised his hand. The room gradually fell silent. There are all kinds of courage, said Dumbledore, smiling. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom. Someone standing outside the Great Hall might have thought some sort of explosion had taken place. So loud was the noise that erupted from Gryffindor table. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood up to yell and cheer as Neville, white with shock, disappeared under the pile of people hugging him. He had never won so much as a point for Gryffindor before. Harry, still cheering, nudged Ron in the ribs and pointed at Malfoy, who couldn't have looked more stunned and horrified if he'd just had the Bodybind curse put on him. A trillion points from Slytherin for being Voldemort's house. And yeah, I'll name it because I'm a badass. I do love me some Professor Flitwick. He's a great teacher. Which means, Dumbledore called over the storm of applause. But even Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were celebrating the downfall of Slytherin. We need a little change of decoration. He clapped his hands. In an instant the green hangings became scarlet and the silver became gold. The huge Slytherin serpent vanished and a towering Gryffindor lion took its place. Snape was shaking Professor McGonagall's hand with a terrible forced smile. He caught Harry's eye, and Harry knew at once that Snape's feelings towards him hadn't changed one jot. This didn't worry Harry. It seemed as though life would be back to normal for the normal next year, or as normal as it ever was at Hogwarts. It was the best evening of Harry's life, better than winning at Quidditch or Christmas or knocking out mountain trolls. He would never, ever forget tonight. Harry had almost forgotten that the exam results were still to come. But come they did. To their great surprise, both he and Ron passed with good marks. Hermione, of course, came top of the year. Even Neville scraped through, his good herbology mark making up for his abysmal potions one. They had hoped that Goyle, who was almost as stupid as he was mean, might be thrown out, but he had passed too. It was a shame, but as Ron said, you couldn't have everything in life. Probably boxes Flitwick. That'd be interesting. That would be an interesting experience. And suddenly their wardrobes were empty and their trunks were packed. Neville's toad was found lurking in a corner of the toilets. Notes were handed out to all students warning them not to use their magic over the holidays. I always hope they forget to give us these, said Fred Weasley sadly. Hagrid was to take them down to the fleet of boats that sailed across the lake. They were boarding the Hogwarts Express, talking and laughing as the countryside became greener and tidier, eating Bertie Bott's every flavoured beans as they sped past Muggle towns, pulling off their wizard robes and putting on jackets and coats. Pulling into the platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross Station. It took quite a while for them all to get off the platform. A wizened old guard was up by the ticket barrier, letting them go through the gates in twos and threes so they didn't attract attention by bursting out of the solid wall all at once and alarming the muggles. You must come and stay this summer, said Ron. Both of you. I'll send you an owl. Thanks, said Harry. I'll need something to look forward to. People jostled them as they moved forwards to the gates and back to the Muggle world. Some of them called, Bye, Harry. See you, Potter. Still famous, said Ron, grinning at him. Not where I'm going, I promise you, said Harry. He, Ron, and Hermione passed through the gateway together. There he is, Mum. There he is. There he is, look. It was Ginny Weasley, Ron's younger sister, but she wasn't pointing at Ron. Harry Potter, she squealed. Look, Mum, can you see? So, I can see. Be quiet, Ginny, and it's rude to point. Mrs. Weasley smiled down at them. Busy year, she said. Very, said Harry. Thanks for the fudge and the jumper, Mrs. Weasley. Oh, it was nothing, dear. Ready, are you? It was Uncle Vernon, still purple-faced, still moustached, still looking furious at the very nerve of Harry for carrying an owl in a cage in a station full of ordinary people. Behind him stood Aunt Petunia and Dudley, looking terrified at the very sight of Harry. You must be Harry's family, said Mrs. Weasley. In a manner of speaking, said Uncle Vernon. Hurry up, boy, we haven't got all day. He walked away. Harry hung back for one last word with Ron and Hermione. See you over the summer, then. Hope you have a good holiday, said Hermione, looking uncertainly after Uncle Vernon, shocked that anyone could be so unpleasant. Oh, I will, said Harry, and they were surprised at the grin that was spreading over his face. They don't know we're not allowed to use magic at home. I'm going to have a lot of fun with Dudley this summer. And that is the end. Done here. Thank you very much. So, this means, of course, that we will soon be in the end. We will soon be starting our new book for the community that was gifted to us by Chopper Utree. There we go. That he be. Community story time. What? Oh geez. Okay. We're gonna start The Kingdom by the Sea by Robert Westall right now. But like, I was gonna wait for like next week, but we can do this now. You don't have to. Okay. Well, I'll read it at the start of the next stream. How does that sound? Would you want? We'll do that because I want to officially make a panel for the book first. Read one word. The. It's just there. It's the. Damn. I'll read you the blurb though for those of you who've missed it so far. Winner of the Guardian Award. The whistling of the bombs was rising to a scream. Harry began to count. If you were still counting at 10, the bombs had missed you. The last thing he remembered saying was 7. When a bomb falls on Harry's home during an air raid, everything he knows is destroyed in a moment. Anxious not to be sent to live with his fussy cousin, Elsie, Harry goes on the run. His only friend, a stray dog named Don. Harry and Don, huh? It's a discount Ron, that's all I'm saying. Will Harry ever find a place to call home again? have spare story time saved for the end of HP. Well, we got there in the end, so we're all good. I am looking forward to making a new panel. I will be doing that over the course of the weekend at some point, and then on Monday you'll have something pretty to look at. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to see if there's anyone worth having a look at, and I'm gonna say that's a solid no. But thank you so much for being here. I'm so tired. My voice hurts. I need a cup of tea. But anyway, thank you for being here and spending time with me. I do appreciate your rating in your bed. That is fair. Go to sleep. I have been talking for 3 hours. My gosh. I look forward to it too. I'm super excited about it. But yeah. So listen. Thank you for being here and spending time with me. I do appreciate it. Thank you all again for your resubs and your gift subs and your support. I do appreciate it every single time. You have no idea what it means to me that you guys are sharing with each other the the community and the benefits and all the emotes. I should probably get another one and a couple of animated ones sorted, but we'll figure that one out when we come to it. I'll talk to my friend again, see if she'll do some extra work for us on the channel. Because there are a couple of emote slots that need sorting out, but I don't know when that's going to be, so we'll see. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Sleep well if it's your bedtime. If it is not your bedtime, have a great time zone, and I will see you guys next time. It will be on Monday, and we will be back with Final Fantasy VII. So, sleep well, and I shall see you on Monday, hopefully. Bye-bye.